We got risers and fallers from the Denver Broncos preseason loss to the Arizona Cardinals. So let's just jump right in and find out who's up and who's down. So my first riser on this list is Russell Wilson. When you factor in just how bad the offensive line play was, he put some really good stuff on tape. I did a film breakdown of Russell Wilson's performance last night, so I'm going to divert you guys over there to check that out if you guys want a more in-depth breakdown on how Russell Wilson played. However, considering the circumstances that he had to deal with, again, I thought he played really well. And that ties into our first set of fallers here, and that is the offensive line as a whole. First team, second team, it was all trash, quite frankly. I thought that our third string offensive line was the best unit out of the bunch, and you got to remember, obviously, they're going against Cardinals' fourth and fifth string pass rushers at that point, so take that for what you will. There's no excusing how bad the offensive line's performance was last night. I mean, they were going against one of the worst pass rushing units in the NFL, and they were getting manhandled out there. It was embarrassing. Garrett Bowles was an absolute atrocity out there. Mike McGlinchey obviously didn't even play in this game, so Isaiah Prince had to start off at right tackle. I didn't think that he played too bad, honestly. He played well into the second quarter as well with the second team offense, so Mike McGlinchey is probably going to be done for the rest of training camp, so I figure to see a lot of Isaiah Prince in these next couple of preseason games. But my biggest concern for the Denver Broncos was actually my least biggest concern going into training camp and what I had seen so far in camp, and that's our guard position. I mean, both of our starting guards looked terrible in this game. The batted ball on the opening drive can be directly attributed to Ben Powers. He also got beat a couple of other times in pass protection. And then Quinn Miners, I'm sorry to say this, Broncos country, Quinn Miners did not have a good game out there last night. He got overwhelmed at least 3 times that I can count in pass pro. So I'm sorry, guys. This offensive line was going against one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL this season, or expected to be one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL. And they were being manhandled out there. I don't know what it's going to be like next week when we go into San Francisco and we have to deal with one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. And then just think about our first two opponents in the regular season. Week 1, we've got to go against the Raiders and Max Crosby, who's an absolute dog. He's going to just absolutely embarrass Garrett Bowles out there. And then week 2, Washington's defensive line is scary. They got Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne on the interior, and then they've got freaking Chase Young and Montez Sweat on the edge. And they've got a lot of depth there as well. I mean, I'm terrified at what Washington's defensive line is going to do to this paper-thin offensive line. It's inexcusable how bad this unit has been, and quite frankly, I feel like a lot of it can be attributed more so to personnel than coaching. I'm wondering just how much of an influence Sean Payton actually had in the signing of Ben Powers. I'm wondering if that was a George Payton move with not much influence there from Sean and the coaching staff. That really does make me wonder, because last night, Ben Powers just didn't look like a good fit in this scheme whatsoever, and I'm really concerned about that. And Quinn Miners, man, again, who's been our most consistent offensive lineman, he got overwhelmed in pass protection, so a big time faller from this game was just the collective offensive line unit as a whole. But there was one starter on the offensive line that actually I do feel like played well, and he's our next riser on the list, and that's Lloyd Cushenberry. Yes, guys, I'm getting ready to sing praise to Lloyd Cushenberry. If you've been a longtime follower of this channel, you know that I have given him a lot of grief, especially over this past offseason. But in training camp and in our first preseason game, Cushenberry really has not been a problem for us. He's been consistent in pass protection. He's been good directing the protection for the most part. I'm impressed with what I've seen from Lloyd Cushenberry. He doesn't look like he's getting overwhelmed in the run game. The play strength issues are not as pronounced as they were last year, so that tells me he's hit the weight room. High praises to you, Lloyd Cushenberry. You've done everything that you've needed to do to up your game this year, and I'm impressed. Our next faller on this list, however, is going to be Cam Fleming. As much grief as Garrett Bowles and Ben Powers got for their poor performance last night, Cam Fleming looked a lot worse. And again, he was going against the third string defensive line of the Arizona Cardinals by that point. And Fleming's somebody who might be our starting left tackle at some point this season if Bowles can't get his you-know-what together. So I'm concerned about just the overall depth at tackle. When Isaiah Prince is your best looking tackle out there, that tells us that you have a big issue with depth at both left tackle and right tackle. And based on what we saw from Mike McGlinchey in camp before he went down, I'm not too confident in him either. So, oh boy, guys, this offensive line just overall is atrocious. So overall, man, the entire offensive line gets a big fat F pretty much for their dismal performance last night. Getting back into some more positives though, Broncos third string quarterback Ben DiNucci is our next riser on this list, and he looked like the best of our two backup quarterbacks out there between him and Jarrett Stidham. Ben DiNucci was decisive with making his throws. Granted, he did have a lot of time back there going against the Cardinals' fourth-string pass rush. The offensive line gave him plenty of time, but still, DiNucci was able to move well, made some nice decisions, made some nice throws on the run. I was really impressed with the DiNucci last night, man. And Jarrett Stidham, who's going to be our next faller on this list, was somebody I was highly not impressed with. We're going to be doing a film study on him as well, but just a little spoiler alert for that one, Broncos country. Stidham looked like hot garbage out there. He really did. But I'll tell you who did not look like hot garbage out there was our running backs. Samaje Perine ran with really good speed and burst. Jaleel McLaughlin, when he finally got into the game at the end of the fourth quarter, was a key part in what we thought was going to be the game-winning touchdown drive. Unfortunately, we just gave the Cardinals a little bit too much time there at the end. But, man, Jaleel McLaughlin looked good. Tyler Beatty also looked fantastic. I gotta be honest, guys, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Denver Broncos kept 4 running backs on their active roster, plus the fullback Michael Burton, in order to justify keeping Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Beatty around, because both of them looked sensational out there, and it's so tough having to choose between one or the other. I mean, Tyler Beatty is clearly a really fast, physical, hard runner, and he's got some insane burst to him, but when you look at Jaleel McLaughlin, man, he's the fastest guy on the field. You can't deny that. So I'm really curious to see how that position battle is going to shake out, and we could very well see both Tyler Beatty and Jaleel McLaughlin on the Denver Broncos active roster, because if we were to cut Jaleel McLaughlin or cut Tyler Beatty, one of those guys would instantly get claimed off waivers and would be a big part of whatever team they went to's offensive game plan. Our next faller is Tremon Smith. The Broncos signed Tremon Smith initially, I thought, to be a kick returner, but at this point it appears that Marvin Mims is going to be our starting kick returner, although he did not play in last night's game. I'm curious to see as to why. Maybe it was an injury, or they just didn't want to risk an injury on that really crappy turf. That's the same reason why they held out guys like Javonte Williams, PS2, and cats like that. But going back to Tremon Smith, man, to this point, the Broncos haven't used him one time on special teams. He's been strictly a defensive back, and he hasn't been very good. In the preseason game last night, he had 2 penalties that were direct contributors in the Cardinals being able to go downfield and score points on their last 2 drives in order to go downfield and win the game. I mean, to that point, Denver's defense had pretty much been shutting Arizona out. Tremon Smith did not play well at all last night, and quite frankly, he could be a potential cut candidate, because I don't know what he's contributing right now. He's been a poor contributor on defense, and he's not contributing on special teams like I thought he would. So I'm not too pleased at all with the performance of Tremon Smith, and I don't think the coaching staff is either. The next 2 risers on this list are Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who both had key big-time catches in this game. Jerry Jeudy with the touchdown catch to cap off the starter's night, and then Courtland Sutton with a couple of really nice catches as well. Overall, you can see that the chemistry between Russ and Court and Jerry is really starting to come together. The timing on their routes is really starting to get in sync with those 2 guys. So I'm really super excited to see that connection continuing to develop between Russ and his top 2 wide receivers. Our next faller is the kicking game. Obviously, last night, the field conditions were atrocious, and we saw Matt Prater, who's been one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL, former Bronco, obviously. He even struggled out there last night, but I don't think that's much of an excuse, man. Brett Maher looked like hammered dog crap out there, missed 2 key kicks, and then Elliott Fry obviously had a miss as well. I don't think there was very much confidence that could be taken away from the Denver Broncos kicking game last night, and same goes for the punting game. Riley Dixon shanked his very first punt, and I'm going to be honest here, guys. Riley Dixon, I wasn't too thrilled with us bringing him back because he really struggled in his first stint here in Denver, especially that second year, man. He was one of the worst punters in the league, and last night, he did not look too promising. And then he also misplaced a second punt where, sure, it probably had a chance to be downed by Jaquan McMillan. But you would have rather Riley given just a few more yards for Jaquan to get down there, basically, in order to down it. But I don't know, man. Riley Dixon did not look good last night either, and he's another faller on this list. Our next two risers are a couple of our young receivers that really stepped up in that final drive. Taylor Grimes, who's been an absolute camp darling, an undrafted free agent, just been super sensational, the guy out of Incarnate Word. And then also we had Michael Bandy, the former Chargers wide receiver who's got that experience with Joe Lombardi, also spent some time in the XFL. They both had some key catches on that last offensive drive for the Broncos. They both have had strong camps as well, so keep an eye on those two big-time risers from last night's game. I also thought that the Broncos' defensive line last night was a big-time riser from the game. Elijah Garcia had 2 sacks. Matt Henningsen looked good out there. Jordan Jackson, number 90, is a guy that's really risen up the depth chart. He's currently listed as the Broncos' main backup defensive end, which is really, really cool, man. I'm super excited for Jordan Jackson and Elijah Garcia in particular. Those guys really stood out. Esane Bassie had an interception. Jaquan McMillan with the sack and had a couple of key PBUs as well. Jaquan looked absolutely amazing out there last night. Montrell Washington also looked really awesome out there, had that big return. They gave him a lot of looks in the return game when they didn't play, since they didn't play Marvin Mims, so I was really impressed with Montrell last night. A couple of more fallers, though. We've got DJ Jones, who's really had a quiet camp, and then unfortunately he exited the game early with a concussion, so just a tough break for him. And then Tony Jones Jr., the former running back for the New Orleans Saints, I thought that he didn't really make the most of his opportunities out there last night, and definitely got outplayed by Tyler Beatty and Jaleel McLaughlin. All right, guys, so overall, let me know if I missed anybody in the comment section down below from the risers or the fallers category. If you guys have another riser or another faller, definitely drop those comments down below and let me know who it is, as always. Alright guys, if I missed another riser or faller from the Denver Broncos preseason game last night, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Let me know who you think stood out last night, both in a good way and in a bad way. Alright guys, be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. And until next time guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.